Indian slavery. There has been some blowback from Native communities. I haven't received a ton of it because the group that I study, the Westos, are extinct.
Yeah, right.
And so I didn't do that on purpose, but it was a pretty good idea. But I have received, you know, some inquiries from Native peoples about, you know, about this. You know, it's very touchy, but there's no mystery to it in the sense that, you know, did this happen or not? I mean, it was a huge part of history, and so I just always have to fall back on that I'm interested in what happened. You know, I mean, and it isn't, you know, they're not unchanging cultures. You know, they're not the same as they've been since the dawn of time, and I know that is an idea that some people want to put across for various political reasons, not the least of which is if they're not there from all time, then maybe their land claims aren't real. And so I don't want to get in the way of any of that, but I do want to try to bring this history out. And it's a delicate balance. But I think it's worth trying. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
When you work on the West Coast, can you just say a little bit about what's the evidence? Well, I mean, what's your method, I guess, if I could call
Sure.
it that, in terms of like the sorts of evidence, the ways in which you're kind of pulling this history together to tell the story?
Absolutely. That's part of the reason that the Westo story hadn't been told very well, is that they traveled so far and wide under a variety of names that the archival evidence for them was scattered. And one of the things that I did was sort of scoop up this archival evidence and put it in one pile. It still amounts to a pretty small pile, but we have Jesuit relations who are, you know, you get that aspect when they were living in the Northeast, when they were in conflict with the then Five Nations Iroquois. There's a tremendous amount of information recorded about those conflicts and about how and when the Erie were forced out of the Northeast. And then you have to pick them up. One of their trading partners at the time were the Susquehannock, who were getting guns out because the Iroquois are trying to control the access that others have to firearms. And so one of the reasons the Westos moved was because they knew they could get firearms in a different place. And they were connected with the Susquehannock, who were getting guns out of the Chesapeake Bay from Maryland. And so they then, and people in Maryland and Virginia called it by a completely different name. And so you had to kind of figure out who was who. Once you did, then they were known as the Rickahecrian, the Rickahokan, and by Virginia, by people in Maryland. And so then you have to go through their archives and find information on that group, which is actually the same group. Then when you get down to Spanish Florida, they were referred to as the Chichimecos, which is kind of a generic name for northern barbarians. But then they became associated with William Byrd and his plantation, the Westover plantation in Virginia, and we believe that possibly this name Westo comes from their association with Virginia, but that's what the Carolinians called them. And so, you know, we have the Jesuit records in French, and we've got the English records all up and down the Atlantic coast, and then we have the Spanish records in Spanish. And I have a gentleman that I've been working with for years who has traveled many times to Spain and has been through the archives and translated many things that have been very important to my work with the Westo. So it's really sort of a just mix it all, grab it all together, throw it down, see what you can make out of it, and then the real thing is to connect it to these greater occurrences, these sort of different scales of historical analysis.
So it's archival, documentary, anything else? It's archival, documentary primarily.
Primarily. We are searching still for the site of Hickahogga, which is the Westo town on the Savannah River. And we have great descriptions of it. We have a pretty good idea of where it is. And a friend and colleague of mine who works for the South Carolina Institute of Archaeology and Anthropology has a program in May where he is going to go out and hopefully finally discover this site. And if that were to be the case, then we would have a whole new kind of data set to work with, and it would be very, very easy to identify the site if we can find it, because they're going to have northeastern pottery, not southern pottery.
That's right. Kind of where I was going with some of
Yeah.
the artifacts.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of artifactual
Yeah.
trail.
There would be that way. Their houses are different. They have long houses instead of the square wattle and daub houses. They also would have an inordinate number of late 17th century European artifacts on their site, because they had access to European artifacts like no other group at that time. So there's a lot of ways to pinpoint that site and know that it is in fact Hickahogga town, which was the name that the Westo referred to their own town. So, yes, sir.
Sort of a follow-up. So the bulk of the archival information, it's all from others, not from the Westos themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the whole
Because
story with Native American ethnohistory.
So
absolutely.
finding this village, this home would
It'd
be
be incredible.
really nice. Yeah.
Yes, it would be an incredible find. And people have looked for it before and been fairly unsuccessful. But I have a lot of faith in Chester. The Prater is the person that I was referring to earlier. He has been doing archaeology in that area for about, maybe 40 or 50 years. And so he has a tremendous base of knowledge with which to try to hunt this thing down. So it would be great to see their material culture speak.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we have got a lot of class in.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.